Jibu's work, I guess, from the founder's vision, which we all like carrying through, is to provide clean, accessible water and also other things like we do porridge, we do LPG gas, clean energy for communities in emerging markets.
So I think Jibu's DNA is to be profit-driven, right? So we believe that impact can only be sustainable if there's a sustainable business model underlying the operation. If you really want to have sustainable operations, you need impact investment to say we are a for-profit business, we are looking at returns, we are looking at running our operations in a way that there will be financial sustainability.
I am a Jibu franchisee and I operate a franchise shop. It's called Jibu Upper Hill, and at Jibu Upper Hill we are able to provide quality water. So we serve households and we serve corporates as well. Our business has been growing and we've been serving many customers, and we look forward to serving many more customers.
When we originated the idea, we saw that there's a lot of valuable waste lying around in the streets of Nairobi. And the core of the idea was always, since day one, is to put kind of the fair trade layer on the people who collect the valuables already and try to make a livelihood out of it. And it's similar to the fair trade principle that you see in banana, tea, coffee industry, where smallholder farmers harvest and sell into more traceable and fair value chains. Same applies in the waste value chain. It's just our smallholder farmers are waste pickers who harvest every day. When we started Mr. Green Africa in 2015, there was no buzzword like circular economy. There was also plastic waste, and plastic recycling was not as prominent as it is today in the media and the awareness of consumers, etc. So when we look at what we have started at that time to focus on how can we create a sustainable business model to empower the people, to create local value addition, funding like that allows us really to now bring it to the next level.
Sanovation partners with local governments in East Africa to solve the sanitation problem. And while that seems like a fairly simple statement, it's difficult because here in Kenya, less than 10% of the human waste is treated before it's dumped in the environment. And so our job is we partner with these governments to help create the models and the technology solutions and help operate to improve this situation, to create ways of safely managing human waste in Kenya. So our model of where we take human waste, mix it with agriculture waste to create a more sustainable fuel actually helps the environment in a few different ways. First off, human waste, if it's not properly managed, as it breaks down, it releases a lot of methane, which can have some large impacts. And on the other side of it, our fuel directly substitutes firewood here in Kenya. Firewood in Kenya, 90% of it is unsustainably harvested. So our fuel, we replace that firewood. And so for every ton of our fuel that we're replacing of firewood, we save about 2.2 tons of carbon equivalent tons.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Louis Gory-Morris and I'm the Partnerships Director at Water Unite, a global non-profit funding clean water for people and planet. Today, it's my pleasure to host this webinar, Water Unite Impact from Pilot to Scale Up, Insights from Launching the First Missing Middle Water Fund. In 2019, with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation, the Water Unite board decided to shift its strategy from solely traditional grant giving to impact investing. Having searched the market, we couldn't find any vehicles funding our key area of interest, Global South focused SMEs in the missing middle of the water sector. So we decided to create. In doing so, we are extremely fortunate to partner with Wellers Impact, an impact investment manager with offices in London and Nairobi. And so Water Unite Impact was born. Over the next hour, we'll be hearing from a range of fantastic speakers about the journey of the impact investment vehicle as it completes its pilot phase and sets course for a broader impact. Having hosted many webinars in the past, it's fantastic to see the interest in today's session, with over 100 registrants representing DFIs, family offices, funds, global corporates, and NGOs. It's my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Cyril Antoniak is an investment partner at Wellers Impact and is the portfolio manager of the Water Unite Impact Fund. Cyril has over 20 years experience in corporate finance and private equity in Africa, Asia, and Europe. He's also the founder and former chairman of Uberis, an impact investment firm, as well as an author and lecturer in leading universities on the topic of impact investing. We'll also be hearing from Martin Pruis, a trustee of Water Unite who sits on the Water Unite Impact Investment Committee. He has over 20 years experience in infrastructure finance across emerging and developed markets. As co-head of EM Alternative Credits at 91, formerly Investec Asset Management, he's involved in the management of the $1 billion Emerging Africa Infrastructure Fund. We're also very excited to be joined by Galen Welsh. Galen co-founded Jibu in 2012. Under his leadership, Jibu has quickly become a top-rated social franchise, bringing affordable drinking water to thousands and creates hundreds of jobs across East Africa. Lastly, we'll be hearing from Usha Ramanari, a partner at Wellers Impact. Until July 2023, Usha was the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and an Associate Administrator of UNDP. Usha has over 30 years experience and has held several senior positions at organizations including Blackstone and the International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank Group. Unfortunately, Usha can't be with us live today, but I caught up with her earlier this week to get her thoughts. Now to the agenda. Cyril and Martin will take us through key insights from the pilot phase of Water Unite Impact. Next, we'll be hearing from Galen on his experiences with Jibu and how businesses can solve the water crisis. And lastly, Usha and Cyril will share their vision for the future of investment in the water sector. Before I hand over, a little bit of housekeeping. There's a question box on the right-hand side of your screen, so please feel free to send in any questions you might have throughout the webinar. We also have already had a large number of questions sent in ahead of time. We'll have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to get through as many questions as we can. If we don't get to your question, we will make sure to come back over email. All of you who've registered today will receive a recording and executive summary after the event. And if you have any colleagues who are unable to attend, just let them know that if they sign up via the original link, they will receive a recording. Lastly, there's a feedback form circulated at the end of the webinar. We're always looking to improve our events just like this, so any comments and suggestions would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, that's enough from me. So I'll pass over to Cyril to take us through the first part of session one. Over to you, Cyril.
Thank you, Louis. Thank you very much. It's very good to be with you today. And a huge thanks to everybody. We have a large number of people registered, with about 49 attendees right now, but over 100 people who have registered. So it's a show of interest, and we're very pleased with that. What I will do in the next 10 minutes or so is to share some of the insights that we have developed in the last 3 years in what we call the pilot. And for that, let me just put something on the screen. We we'll go through session one with basically the key learnings from that preliminary period. First of all, some background. Louis explained about Water Unite and Wellers Impact. They came together in 2020 as a joint venture to put a Water Unite Impact together as an investment vehicle with a specific investment strategy. Was launched with the name of Water Unite Pilot Investment Vehicle WUPIV, and the objective was to actually run a trial period for the first 3 years, which we are basically pivoting out now. Essentially, this fund brings together two large sources of funding. First, the first loss tranche funded by donors, largely corporate donors, through Water Unite, working together in collaboration with Water Unite and Water Unite Impact to develop their corporate social responsibility or strategy around water and circular economy. And then we have senior capital from private investors such as high net worth, family offices, etc., who are looking for exposure in water as a topic and circular economy and the larger topics around water, which we are developing. but also trying to benefit from real blended finance vehicle with first loss protection provided by the non-profit investors here. So to share the objectives of WPIV, essentially 4 objectives. The first one is really to address the water gap, which we see as access to fresh drinking water or clean water, sanitation services. We all know there's a gap, a sizable gap of $1 billion plus in that. So that would be the first objective. Then it's to address pollutions around water and plastics with circular economy models like waste to energy or the circular economy. Then it's providing additionality in addressing the missing middle, which we know is acute in the global south, and more so in water. And finally, it's to support companies that are intentional about solving problems in related sectors around water with benefits on social and climate risks. Now, the pilot was put together initially to try our investment thesis against reality, particularly looking at the depth of the deal flow. Water as a sector is not renowned to have a large deal flow, especially for early or small investments. So it was actually an attractive and interesting proposition that needed to be tested. Then, of course, is to build an early portfolio against the investment thesis and try to build some preliminary track record out of it. So let's see how we have fared against these objectives. First of all, on the deal flow, what we did starting in 2021 is to review a pool of opportunities, which is around 200, against our selection criteria. That includes companies that work on problems around water in the global south, developing innovations with proven commercial concepts, filling gaps in the value chain where classic infrastructure / water services is perhaps failing to address, and finally to bring acceleration finance to proven companies but still pre-scale, and that's where our additionality plays out. In order to do that, we have built a rather rigorous process to screen these 200 companies where we have different positions, red, amber, green, on no less than sort of six steps in the chain. So to share the learnings on that, first of all, it's essentially about the idea that it's not about wash in a classic sense of the term. It's more about water sustainability. We see that classic wash solutions are maturing and showing limits in a way they address the needs of the population, particularly urban population, leaving gaps behind and largely behind the curve. If you look at the rapid pace of urbanization around the world, especially in the global south, the provision of classic wash infrastructure leaves a massive gap behind. Second, it's about water as a core climate risk, which is perhaps the way it's felt the most acutely by populations exposed to climate change. It's a lasting, it's a permanent, not intermittent. And we believe that water scarcity as a topic is taking center stage now before the classic issues around WASH, where traditionally it was about filling the gaps in provision of water and services around sanitation. In fact, water scarcity is rising at the agenda. A lot of potential conflicts and social unrest coming together with it, and there's only a short time frame to fix it. So this is topping the agenda now. Circular economy is very closely intertwined with water because there's a lot of circularity in water and wastewater management, and also reversely, there's lots of circular economy solutions that lead to preserve water the same way they lead to preserve other natural resources. The fourth learning really is about the fact that there is an increasing pool of technology available to address those gaps. There's a wave of water tech which we believe is going to rise more further in the future. The same way we've seen a wave of clean techs to address climate risks, and so this is what's interesting. So this is a larger pool of opportunities coming together. But what's interesting as well is that it is very strongly interconnected with other sectors like energy, food, agriculture, and etc. So there is a nexus of solutions around water for this. And final learning is about blended finance as a key to do what we do, because essentially we're addressing companies in a nascent sector. Those companies need time to develop their value proposition. So patient capital is needed for that reason. Having blended finance is essential because it brings a solution to de-risk private investments. It is helpful for companies. It is also very useful for private investors because it brings a de-risking. And so we found that a unique blend of funds using corporate venture philanthropy and private venture capital is a big advantage in what we do, and perhaps the most, the single most important USP in that product. So looking at the portfolio now, how we've actually managed to build a portfolio, I think it's useful to explain that the investment thesis has 5 pillars. Pillar 1 is really about access to clean drinking water. And this is where we have Djibo as our first investment. We'll hear about Djibo more in a minute by the founder and CEO, Gannon Walsh. Second is sanitation with access to toilets, which still is a massive gap globally as well. So this is another classic Walsh issue, where we have an investment in Sanivation. You've seen a short video about Sanivation. This is a company that provides solutions to municipalities in Kenya and East Africa to address issues around human waste and treatment and management, and a waste-to-energy model. 3 is wastewater circularity, with a company that does biogas out of wastewater, properly managed to release clean water in the environment, as well as byproducts like green energy and biochar. And 4 is about plastic circularity, where there's an example in Mr. Green Africa. That's a Kenya-based company that does recycled plastics for FMCGs. And has put together an ethical and clean supply chain of waste pickers to do that. So it's a full circularity solution. And finally, it's water preservation, which is the topic I discussed about water scarcity, where we have our first investment in the form of CBEX. It's an early stage venture that does artificial intelligence for the benefit of farmers, using IoT in irrigation. So it's not the IoT, it's the artificial intelligence coming on top of it. And the early tests they've done on a large scale with about 4,000 farmers show that they can save as much as 30% water in irrigated agriculture. So this is the early portfolio that we have built. Each of our 5 investments actually fit one of the 5 pillars in the investment thesis. And if you look at another way of looking at that is to look at, how they fit basically various propositions. So the first 2 are obviously classic Walsh, then the other 2 are more into circular economy. And if you add the 5th one, it is a bundle of smart water solutions. So to exemplify where we are now, and by way of, early form of track record, I will talk to you about 2 investments we've made. One is Mr. Green Africa, I just mentioned, where we invested in December 2021 at a pre-money valuation of 14 million back then in Series B pref shares. It's an equity investment. And Mr. Green has raised an extension of the Series B by 6 million convertible notes in March 2023, and has just closed another 9 million of convertibles against a CLA convertible loan agreement. That is an additional 15 million going into this company, and that 15 million is eventually will play into the valuation of the equity, because this is in convertible capital. That comes in addition to straight loans from various lenders. Another good example is Djibo, where we've invested in June 2022. That's where we invested in at a 31 million valuation, pre-money, Class B pref shares, and Djibu is now currently in discussions with a large strategic investor to bring in another 8 million in the business, bringing up the valuation with a 1.7 to 1 multiple from the pre-money valuation. So in a 17-month investments, this equates to return annualized 43%. Which shows some interesting form of track record, and it's all out of investing in a company that's on the cusp of its development. So how we've done on these pilots objectives, we have satisfactorily tested our investment thesis, because we developed 5 axes against which we have 5 different investments. We've also tested the deal flow, believe that there is enough deal flow to satisfy what we want to do and provide enough selectivity in our portfolio. We did build our early portfolio, which I just shared with you, and there is already some form of track record there. So that's where we are now, and having sort of ticked the box on all the objectives, we feel that we are good to pivot out into the acceleration phase. So that's it for the session 1. What I want to do now is to pass over to Martin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cyril. Really appreciate that. So Martin, if you'll join us now. So yeah, we're very, very glad to have you on board in this call, Martin, to get the views from an investment committee member. So I guess the first question for you, Martin, is how did you get involved in Water Unite Impact? What brought you here from your normal day job, I suppose?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me on this panel. So my name is Martijn Proos. As Lou introduced me, I have worked on the infrastructure space in Africa mostly, most of my career. I started in the construction industry in the Netherlands, and I worked for the Dutch Development Bank for a little while, and then I joined 91 and the Emerging Africa Infrastructure Fund, the fund that I'm responsible for in 2008. And what that fund is a blended finance vehicle backed by 4 European governments, and then levered through a mix of DFIs and commercial banks and institutional investors, providing long-term debt capital to privately owned and managed infrastructure projects on the continent. Probably the reasons why I was approached for joining Water Unite is that I was part of the team that was the mandated leader agent for one of the first bulk water PPPs in Africa, the Kigali Bulk Water Project, and probably they wanted to tap into my expertise and knowledge about that. So I got involved and approached for Water Unite, and what really appealed to me, first of all, was the funding model, that it was set up, which I thought was very unique, applying this levy, it has involved looking at different sources of funding as well on top of that. And obviously the mandate, there's, traveling throughout Africa and some of the other emerging markets, still so much to be done. And it's a universal right to have access to proper services, water, sanitation, and as well as addressing the plastics problem and improving circular economies really appealed to me, and that's the reason why I got involved, and I've been enjoying it very much to date.
Great, thank you, Austin. And can you tell us a little bit about your observations as an IC in terms of the materials that you see on a daily basis, the way the due diligence is shared with you? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So the really interesting part is actually my work, besides being a trustee and sitting on the board, being part of the investment committee, that's where the exciting stuff happens, right? Is, seeing the Djibou's, the Mr. Green Africas and the Senovations of this world being presented to us. And what I really enjoy is kind of the broad mandate the fund has. So a lot of typical WASH funds really focus on access, improving access. And this is a broad mandate. Yes, access is a big part of this mandate, but it also looks at circular economy and improving tech and using tech to, address the problems in this sector. So, for instance, recently we had a improvement tech company that improves irrigation systems and actually contributes to water preservation. Really exciting stuff. So broad mandate. my impression on the investment committee. So obviously you have, when I joined, I had a vision of the companies that this fund would target and given its mandate, and Cyril and his team has really been able to deliver that. So it's pretty broad. And what we typically see is companies that are typically have a concept and that is partly proven. And a lot of companies are in that phase, that proven concept, turning EBITDA positive. Some are a little bit more advanced, some a little bit more early stage, but need that critical capital to get to the acceleration phase, to scale their businesses, become financial sustainability, and deliver impact at scale. So really exciting to see that. And actually, the number of opportunities that we have seen is quite large. So there's also a lot of stuff that doesn't make the cut. I think we have put in place a proper selection process that, first of all, for each screen looks at, okay, does it meet the mandate? Is it part of mandate? Will it deliver the impact that this fund wants to achieve? Once it passes that hurdle, we obviously look at the credit case, the business model, the market assessment, the pricing, and all the risk involved, including ESG. And I think we made a good selection so far, and you have seen the results to date, just presented by Cyril.
Great, thanks, Martin. I think that's perfect tee up to pass on to Gail and tell us a little bit more about Jibu. And Martin will come back with some more questions to you at the Q&A at the end of the session. So, Galen, we'd love to hear more about the model behind Jibu, about the work that you guys have been doing, and the role of impact investing really in your journey to drive both financial but also impact returns. So, yeah, I'll pass over to you. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Louis, and hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and it's exciting to see some familiar faces and good friends on the call. So some of you are already familiar with the Jibu story, and you saw a little bit on the video, but I'll just start out with giving a quick basic of what Jibu is. So I co-founded Jibu with the dual mission of creating access to basic necessities with drinking water as our anchor product, and also addressing the entrepreneurial opportunity gap. Because there's often not opportunity to go beyond just subsistence business in a lot of emerging markets across the world. So Jibu is a model that uses a franchising method to basically create the tools for local entrepreneurs to launch and grow their own drinking water franchises. And so we, like mentioned, we're on this cusp of growth right now, where we've built a network across 8 countries with 200 production franchises serving through about 8,000 resellers. And each of these production franchises basically takes water on site at a high visibility retail point, like the one you see in the top picture in the middle here. And then they produce water, package it in reusable bottles, so typically a 20-liter bottle with a tap, and distribute to a 1 or 2 kilometer radius right around the business. So the basic business model is customers pay for refills and deliveries from franchisees, and then franchisees pay a franchise fee to Jibu Co, the franchisor. And how that fee is structured is a flat fee per liter based on the water produced through the water treatment system at the production sites in franchises. So basically what we're providing to franchisees is this customized franchise system built for emerging markets, where we pair financing with a franchise model to enable us to attract the right profile of entrepreneurs who will really be embedded in their neighborhood and in their communities. So we finance the upfront cost of a build out of a franchise, and then a franchisee co-invests a licensing fee, so that they have some skin in the game, but it's not so much skin in the game that it will make the opportunity not affordable for them. So essentially what we're providing to franchisees, besides that financing up front, is the advantage of having a common brand with other franchisees, of helping to build the regulatory relationships for their approvals for, say, drinking water quality, the technology side on the water treatment system and the maintenance of that, the packaging itself with the Jibu tap bottle, quality control, standard operating procedures, training, and then finally, basically ability to have all their supply chain managed by us. So we have a central warehouse where we source the key inputs for a franchise owner, and then we pass through essentially at cost those supplies. And since we're buying in bulk for entire network, we can get better pricing, better quality, all of that. So we're giving a small entrepreneur a big business advantage with this common brand and then access to all of these components. So if we look at Jibu and the environment, Jibu is, yeah, really like Cyril said in the beginning, we're a drinking water company, but we're utilizing a circular economy model to supply the neighborhoods right around. So if we're looking at our environmental impact across the entire value chain, essentially we have water treatment systems that are hyper energy efficient, water being produced and put into reusable bottles and then distributed through resellers or directly to end customers within just a small neighborhood right around, which brings down the distribution costs and emissions there. And then end customers will refill their bottles and reuse those bottles until the point at which we can regrind the bottles and make new bottles out of them. So because we have a large percentage of customers who switched from boiled water to Jibu, we're actually able to generate carbon credits from the switch from the charcoal that's saved in boiling to customers that switch to Jibu. So we're actually in process of getting our first verification right now. We've partnered with South Pole and they're pre-financing the project for us. And it could be a nice way to actually make the price even more affordable for end customers. So if we talk about the capitalization a little bit, Cyril already shared somewhat. So we did our Class B 1 financing which we closed last year, which Wellers Impact participated in. And we raised about 7 million of equity and 3 million of long-term debt in that financing round. And now we've been approached by a potential strategic partner who would like to make a larger investment in Jibu equity to help accelerate our growth. I think we're really at this cusp where we have the model proven as far as our success rate for launching new franchises across a diverse array of markets. And now it's been a long time coming, but we're finally at the point where we can really scale. So we were actually an 11-year-old company, and we anticipated, in year 2 or 3, we would be at this point where we can really start scaling. So we've been building the company for that all along, but we're finally at that point now where I think we're able to accelerate our rate of growth quite significantly. And that will be partly catalyzed by this next round of financing. And so, oh yeah, I wanted to share also on our, like Cyril mentioned about blended capital, that was very critical in our first financing round. So we had a blend of grants and equity, and those grants really enabled us to raise the equity because otherwise we were perceived as too high risk and not attractive enough. And so that proof of concept capital was super critical to enable us to start scaling and growing into other markets, and ultimately get to the point where we can start to prove more pure commercial viability. With selling drinking water, it is a high volume, low margin business. And so it's really at scale where you can start to have enough gross profit where you can cover costs to have a global engine and overhead. So that's just a quick run through on Jibu, and I will turn it back to Louis.
Thank you, Galen. And we had a few questions come in, so we'll get to those in the Q&A at the end. But that's really, really helpful to hear about your journey and the growth that you've experienced in the last few years. It's fantastic. So that kind of brings us to the end of session 2. The next session is the vision for the future and what's next for investment in the water sector. And I was fortunate enough to sit down with Usha Ramanari, who's just started as a partner at Wellers Impact, to get her view on that. So she uses a pre-recorded video, which I'll share with you now to give you Usha's thoughts on the future for investing, given her experience. And then Cyril will come in with some specific details about the Water Unite Impact vehicle. So just give me a moment, I'll bring up that video and we can go from there. So over to Usha.
Louis, it looks like the sound's not coming through, at least on my end.
Not getting the sound, Galen, did you say?
Yeah, there's no sound coming through.
Okay, just
That's
one
true. Same for me, no sound.
Okay, all right. Why don't we, Cyril, if you can run us through your thoughts, and I'll see if I can sort the technical issues at our end. Would you be happy to take us through your part for this section?
Yeah, sure. When I would do that. Okay, so let me share my screen again. This will be on the beginning of session 3, and that's where we are now. Right. So in that session, I just wanted to give you a few pointers about the way we see the future of water, and that's a topic that's probably larger than what we will do effectively, but that's a good path forward for us to to set out in the future, and also share our vision with you more largely. So if we look at the water, basically there is something that we call the water nexus, which is going to see water more largely than just wash. Wash is kind of traditionally the way water is seen by investors, a number of wash funds. And if you look at AUM invested in water, it's predominantly in that sort of silo type of things, investing in utilities and other type of infrastructures. But the reality is that other sectors are also interested in issues around water. First and foremost, agriculture, of course, because food, and we've seen that, it's a huge impact. Water scarcity is a huge impact on the way agriculture is actually turning around to behave around water. The second sector is really energy, first of all, because water is a source of energy, but also because water is used in the energy process. You can think of hydroelectricity, but also or microhydro, etc., which has been rising fairly fast in the emerging world. But also, the way water is used in other processes and energy, for example, nuclear power plants. And industry is a huge user of water. It also is a massive polluter of water. So, think of just the water footprint of products like, a pair of jeans is like 11,000 liters of water, and et cetera. We all have a water footprint that apparently is like 20 times what we consume directly from drinking and from toilet use through the FMCG products that we do have. And then other industries are also impacted by this, like hospitality, but I'm sure we can find more examples. So if you look at that, basically it's thinking around the impact of scarcity. And we think that in a water scarce environment, all sectors will be impacted by a number of things. Essentially 4 things we can think of. First is water 3 R's, which is the classic circular economy things around reduce, reuse, and recycle. So there's going to be a lot of that as a response to water scarcity, just like for other natural resources, leading to a number of enhanced water use, And then also we can see the emergence of notions around water footprint that's already in existence and been traded in some parts, and the emergence as well of impact assets to monetize these. Okay, so it sounds like futuristic now. It's not exactly tangible here now, but it will come to play in the next decade or so. And so looking at the solutions around that, you have a number of things. First is equipments around water hardware, which I call water hardware here. It's equipments for water reduction, 3Rs, things around harvesting water, recycling it, and of course, data analytics on Internet of Things plugged onto these solutions with AI-enabled processes. The second thing is really what we call small infras, where you'd have mini and micro scale infrastructure becoming a response, where things like containerized solutions around provision of clean water, but also wastewater management. Particularly interesting in the case of toxic wastes or plastics, which are difficult, on all the types of difficult wastes to manage. Things around the niche like desalinization and air to water that can work with renewable energy. We see a number of things coming around that, and that is also helping to plug the gap in places where neither the classic infrastructure nor any other solutions actually exist at the moment. And then the third pillar would be probably, water rights, with things coming up like, the calculation of water footprint. The more we use that, the more we have data analytics around how we can basically do water reduction, build water hardware, etc. Putting together some offsets. We've seen examples of company doing that with very smart water solutions, being able to, issue water rights, enabling other people to have said themselves, and in fact increasing their revenue substantially out of that. And all the rise of impact assets could eventually create a sort of a secondary economy with things to monetize, the reduction of water footprint. So all of that is in the making, and we are seriously interested in sort of looking at the development of that. It will impact some of the investments we do have already, or some of the more classic investments there are around the sector. So if we look at the investment mapping, that is sort of the translation of that on two axes. One is sort of capital intensity and returns, or risk returns. What we see where the bulk of the money is going at the moment is classic large infrastructure with water and sanitation, wastewater management, etc. It is pretty much where the money is focused at the moment. If you think of water, this is where most of the money will be going. And then we see the rise of mini or micro infrastructure, trying to fill in the gaps where classic infrastructure is perhaps failing. That's already a rise in the value chain, and that's where we are already interested, already invested. Then you have circular solutions, the way I just mentioned. But what we see is a nexus of solutions around what we call water plus, which is basically the extension of investing into water to benefit of other sectors like energy, food, ag, non-food, FMCGs, etc. Where there is rapid innovation, a large number of opportunities in the making, small capital intensity, but potentially high risk returns. So that is where we will have our, our deal flow looking to across that map, but looking from the macro, mini macro to circular solutions to water plus solutions. And those innovations, they come together with strong climate resilience, high social impacts, abating the social risks around water scarcity, which we see rising fast. It also comes together with large market demand and uptake, because these solutions are facing a huge pent-up demand, and also with potentially high valuation upsides. And I will finish with this. If you look at basically where we are now and where most of the money is concentrated, that's actually the blue point on classic water infrastructure. We've begun to extend the circle with water smart solutions, but really in the future we see a lot of room for more investment opportunities with water plus solutions, the way I described them earlier. So that's it for me now. I'll be happy to take your questions in the Q&A sessions after that. Let's hear about Usha next. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Cyril. So we'll go another go, see if we can get Usha's video working. I've got a couple of options here. So I'll try the first one, see if that works, and then if not, we'll try the second option. So just give me a bit of feedback, Cyril, whether you can hear this or not when it comes up. That'd be great.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be part of this very important webinar on water and the importance of water and investing in water. My name is Usha Rao-Munari. I'm a partner at Wellers Impact. Prior to this, I was Under Secretary General at the United Nations, and more specifically, Associate Administrator at the UNDP. There, water was a very important topic, rising in importance just because of the issue of water scarcity around the world. Prior to that, I worked with the Blackstone Group, an asset management company in the United States.
All right, sorry, it looks like we're still having a little bit of a problem with the video. I'm just going to have one more try and see if I can get it to work another way.
Louis, the audio was coming through well at first, but we had no visual, but that was clear.
Okay, yeah, so one more try this then.
States. Again, in the area of infrastructure and water investment, there the push was to try to bring scale finance into these important spaces. Prior to that, I worked at the World Bank Group, specifically at the International Finance Corporation, where we worked with companies involved in water and other infrastructure service provision. Very, very important area of investment at that time, and even more important today. The water sector has undergone a very large change over the last decade. It is a sector that has traditionally received limited investment because it has been characterized as a sector where risks are high and returns are low. However, today, in the world that we live in, which is fraught, which is an insecure world, which is a vulnerable world with climate and conflict and COVID behind us and possibly in front of us, we have to contend with the growing reality that water as a resource is becoming increasingly scarce. And why is that? Because water has become much more fundamental in the climate dialogue and debate. It's become much more fundamental in the food security debate. And indeed, as always, it is fundamental in the energy security debate. So when you look at water as a piece of the larger development agenda, it has achieved an importance that it did not have before. What does that mean for us in the finance space? It means that we need to put much more money than is currently going into the sector to do things like WASH, for sure, but much beyond WASH, because access is one aspect of the water sector. Security is the other aspect. Security involves multiple uses, it involves scarcity, it involves climate effects, it involves the balance between food and bioenergy. So when you look at all of this, certainly you find that water is at the center of the development thinking of the future. I must also say that I was a board member of Water Unite some years ago, a founding board member when it was first set up, but also an investment committee member at Water Unite Impact, the pilot initiative that was started a few years ago. Why is this important? This is important because Water Unite Impact is part of Wellers Impact, a small but substantive asset management firm that is involved in creating impact. Not just impact in water, but impact in other related sectors as well. Why is this important? Because today we're at a point where not enough finance, not enough policy, not enough innovation, and in some cases not enough governance is going into creating a sustainable and resilient water plus sector. What we do here at Wellers Impact is to invest in companies in the current moment, which we call the missing middle. These are smaller companies that have excellent technology models, or business models, or both, to look at water in a different way, to address the issues that people and planet face when it comes to water provision, water delivery, and water security. These missing middle companies will be tomorrow's larger players, and the sector today does not have enough companies that are large enough to be able to create an underpinning that is strong and resilient for water provision. One of the outstanding characteristics of the work we do at Wellers Impact is our ability, which really makes Wellers Impact stand out, the ability to create a substantive and strong pipeline of deals. This is one impact management firm that already during its pilot period has invested money in 4, I think almost 5 deals. Most other impact companies or asset management companies have the money, although even that's quite difficult, have the money, but they're looking for deals and projects. Wellers Impact has a very strong pipeline of deals that we are looking at on a daily basis. We are evaluating against extremely stringent impact and return criteria, and that need money today. As we go forward, we will also invest in related nexus sectors, as we call it. So water and food, let's say water and agriculture, water and energy, because these are areas that are coming up as very, very important areas that require 4 or 5 things. They certainly require finance. They require innovation, both in technology and in business model, really. They require governance. Now, governance is not just policy, but the institutions that back the policy. They require infrastructure because in many cases, there's not adequate infrastructure to create the water fundamentals that we're looking for. And finally, we're looking at the whole area of social equity and social participation in this sector, which in fact is something that is very close to everybody, whether you're a domestic household, you're a company, you're a farm. Water is fundamental to your everyday function. So when you look at water in this way and you combine finance with policy and finance with social instruments, that's when you come up with models that will work for the future. And that's exactly what we're doing here at Wellers Impact. I think it's really important that today, as we sit here, honestly, at a point where what we do today, the choices we make today, will determine how good or bad, how helpful or not helpful our future is. When we sit at this point, it is vital that we make the right choices around water. So I would ask all of you, when you think about what you're talking about in this webinar, what we are presenting to you and what you are thinking about, please think about how to create innovative and positively disruptive solutions for water. This is a sector that is primed for success and growth at scale, and we must all be part of it. Thank you.
Great, and thank you, Usha, for that. So now I'll ask all of our panelists to bring back on their cameras and take themselves off mute, and we'll do a bit of a Q&A to cover off the questions that have been coming in. We're a little behind schedule because of the tech issue, so we'll try to get through as many of these as possible. But yeah, thank you for your questions before the webinar and the ones we've gone on now. So I'll kick off with this one that we received before the webinar, but it seems like a really good place to start. So, and this is probably more for Cyril and Martin, but why have you decided to declare the pilot phase of the investment vehicle completed? What has changed? What's led to that milestone? Maybe Cyril, you could take that to start. You're on mute, Cyril.
Oops, sorry, it works better with the mic, sorry. Thank you. Yes, it's what I explained in my presentation. Is in fact we had objectives for this pilot, and we now feel we're satisfied with the attainment of the objectives. Those 5 objectives are predominantly, we test our investment thesis against the availability of the deal flow, against the reality of these investments, the opportunity to actually have decent investment opportunities and create some early track record. So we feel we're there now. 3 years is a good period to do that. So now it's time to pivot to go into acceleration. We've also multiplied the discussions with investors recently, so we aim to scale up what we do.
Yeah, maybe to add, Louis, I totally agree. We have done a number of investments right now. I think the investment opportunities are there in the market. We're generating enough opportunities there, so there's definitely enough in the market there to scale up. I think also our funding model is on a more sustainable footing right now. But obviously, we want to scale up, and that's why we want to bring in more investors to deliver the impact of this fund.
Thank you both. Again, a question for you in terms of water solutions to reach more informal areas, and how you see the sort of capabilities of businesses like Jibu to reach more universal access while still creating profits, right, and being a sustainable business. How do you see that?
Yeah, so we try to have the drinking water be as affordable as possible through the core business model. However, there are many of the lowest income folks that can't afford even that price. So we actually have an initiative which we used to call the Water Club, and now we call Jibuntu. But it's basically ways to reach low-income folks with special initiatives. So one of the barriers, for instance, is we realize that some customers can't pay for the upfront costs of the bottle, the one-time deposit, but they can pay for the refill price on an ongoing basis. So if we can just remove that barrier through a subsidy of the bottle price or a micro loan, we actually have very good retention and return of those low-income customers. Another way is directly just actually focus on those low-income areas where we can have a different pricing structure and reduce the price even more. So I think the important thing to keep in mind is like everybody that doesn't have consistent daily access to affordable drinking water needs it. So I think our goal is to reach everyone. However, we have a long ways to go, and even if you just reach 1% deeper every year, then that's a huge success, because we have 8 billion people on the planet that need drinking water every day, and almost half that don't have it. So
yeah, and I guess that's where the blended finance approaches as well come in to start reaching some of those last mile communities as well, if you can tap into different types of funding, right? Yeah. A question for Cyril and Martin that came in over the webinar. Can you give us an example of an investment that was unsuccessful for when applying for investment from Water Unite Impact, and some of the reasons, obviously not having to name the case exactly, but some of the reasons why a business might not make it through the due diligence process and might fall short?
In a sense of not managing to qualify by the investment committee to enter the portfolio.
Correct. Yeah. So yeah, what are the kind of things that you're looking for? What are the areas that companies might be falling short?
Well, we have several cases that came into that. I mean, I can think of 2 right now. One was that the business model was right, because actually this company was growing fast, delivering the sort of services. It was a sanitation business, but they didn't have the ability to actually prove their impacts. In other words, they were servicing a large poor population, including the BOP, but wasn't sure how much they were servicing the BOP. And that all came together with basically intentionality of this company being a bit fuzzy. They were not directly targeted at the sort of population where they would effectively plug the gap, etc. So we were interested in the business. We tried to put some technical assistance together for them to travel that. but it failed ultimately because I think, for one part, the founders' intentionality was not strong enough, and they opportunistically raised another a large amount, from a non-impact investor that basically deterred the whole undertaking that we had to move them into more intentionality. So that could have been a good investment, but it failed for that reason. Another reason is a company with an interesting business model, but a lack of success, a lack of market adoption. When we looked into that, the product was fine. The needs, the demand from the uptake from the demand side was big. Effective was proven, so they had good proof of concept, etc. So it turned out that basically what was missing there is management. A bit too centric. The CEO was actually putting all the strings, not enough delegation, not enough talent around. So this quickly came to a limit. So it's not very often you see that, but is to not forget the fact that basically it's the jockey, not the horse we invest into. It is predominantly people driven. So it has to be strong leaders with ability to delegate and surround themselves with other talents that was missing in that case. So two different examples, but so some investments, however pretty good commercially, would actually fail to enter the portfolio because we do have these very strict look at it.
Yeah, I'm conscious.
I also remember a couple of cases where it was just too early for us to invest, where the company just had started and still required actually a bit of concessional capital to come in, which it was not for us yet. Yeah.
Great. Thank you all. I'm conscious of the time, so we've just gone past the hour, so we'll have to wrap up there. But we do have a number of extra questions. So what we'll do is the questions we didn't get to, we'll come back to you by email. And what I'll also do is I'll put our contact details on the screen in a moment's time. So if you want to reach out for an introductory call or ask any more questions, you can do so. But yeah, thank you everyone for attending. Just a quick note, anyone that's attending COP28 next month, we'll be hosting a session on December the 4th in the Blue Zone. So please do reach out to either myself or Cyril if you're interested in that. But yeah, with that, I'd like to wrap it up. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Cyril. Thank you, Galen. And thank you, Usha. Thank you all for attending. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you soon, either in a one-to-one bilateral call or another event coming up. So yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Goodbye. Thank you.